Hello everyone, welcome back to the Don Pod. I'm Sam.
I'm Nathan.
Yes, we rehearsed that. We're here with another match review from yesterday. The Dogs and the Bombers in a unofficial pre-season match where we actually won 12-9-81 to 11-9-75.
Win's a win, 4 points, Sam.
Not quite. The Dons, pretty strong lineup. Only really Stringer and Waller not in the side from
Probably
what you
Hurley
might
too.
consider.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we're used to that.
Hurley, obviously, yeah.
Yeah. Interestingly, though, both Stringer and Waller trained yesterday morning as well. And the Dogs were quite strong too. So we actually did a bit of research, unheard of. From their grand final side, only 3 players out: Wood, Keith, and Bailey Smith, who, I mean, quite good players. Let's take nothing away, but only 3 changes leads you to think quite a good side.
Yep.
Just on that, of course, we have had a longer pre-season than them. Being grand finalists, they would have started their pre-season a bit later, so still a grain of salt required, but a bloody good test to have as our first competitive sort of hit out for the season. So,
well, it's good. It is good, as you said, playing a good quality team. I mean, you can take it as you want, but it is better probably playing a team like the Dogs, who are going to really test you.
Yeah, I'd be much rather to play them right now than North Melbourne. No disrespect to North, but they are expected to be bottom 4.
Yep.
So we'll go over a couple of things. We've got a few positives, a few negatives. Not negatives as such, just things we noticed that we think could improve. We'll start with the positives, and this is one you were quite big on. No injuries.
Well, I was a bit worried when the Franger went down in the first, I think it was his first contest down on the wing.
Just about.
He clutched the knee, and I thought, oh, God, no, not the Frang. But got up, came back on, and played out the rest of the game, and ran and jumped, and so
looked
I imagine
fine.
he's right. Yeah, looked fine. So I think that's what you don't want in pre-season is major injuries. So I'm taking that as the biggest positive.
We could have lost by 10 goals. No injuries would have been a massive, massive win.
Yep. Or even to win and have 2 guys do knees. Like, I don't care. Yeah, it would have been horrible.
Awful.
Yeah.
So, yes, that's great. Got through unscathed. And as I mentioned earlier, Stringer and Tipper, who are both the ones out, did train yesterday as well. So, pretty clean bill of health. Obviously, still the big one. Reed still carrying.
And Reed's running. I know he's building up his load. So I know he's coming along well. And Hurley's, he's been doing a bit more running too. So we're a pretty clean bill of health at the moment, really.
Which isn't all that common for us, I feel.
No, I wouldn't say it's common for many clubs, to be honest. But
fair.
That's a good way to get into the season anyway. So if we now lose, we know it's just crap.
No excuses.
No excuses.
So yeah, big tick there. No injuries. I'd like to talk about McGrath. I think we need to talk about McGrath.
Yeah.
I believe in our Best 22 pod, we talked about him just absolutely not being a halfback.
We poo-pooed it, Sam.
And unfortunately for us, he spent the vast majority yesterday on halfback. But one of the knocks around the traps, just from supporters generally, is his composure. He just chucks the ball in the boot, kicks it to the opposition, whatever. He was pretty bloody good yesterday. A couple of times, especially early on. First half in particular, he got the ball, went to throw it on the boot, didn't, took the sidestep, brushed the tackle, whatever it might have been, and then actually hit a target.
Yeah, I thought he was very good.
Yeah.
He's very good at that one-on-one because he's got pace and he's got strength, so he can get to the contest, if he's on a reasonably quick player. And then he holds his feet. He doesn't go to ground, which a couple of players, Langford went to ground a couple of times. It frustrated me. And just to back up that sort of not playing as much midfield, he only attended 1 centre bounce. So he might have been maybe turned up on the wing, but he wasn't in that middle middle 3, yeah.
It's an interesting one. You mentioned yesterday, I think, maybe just trying to get some confidence back in him, a bit of ball in hand, maybe before he goes to the midfield. I'm sure during the season we'll see him rotate through.
He's too good a player to be playing off the halfback flank.
I'd be disappointed if he was there the whole season. But to his credit, He did play there yesterday and looked really nice.
Yep.
Like I said, did actually hit the targets after initially looking like he was going to just panic a little bit. Which might be why he's there. He might be there to work on that specifically.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that out of because now we've bolstered our midfield with these players that we've either got better or whatnot. He's the one that can play that role, that half-back flank out of them all. So if he can still remain on field and go stand on a half-back flank for half a quarter, then that could be his kind of rest, to some degree.
Yeah. So yeah, that was good to see, albeit not what we talked about, but we're happy to be wrong. Sometimes.
Well, we're not. Let's be honest.
Yeah. We'll talk. We'll admit it. We're not happy about it. But
we're not happy about it. We'll swallow our
pride.
And...
We'll admit it. Yeah. Speaking of swallowing pride, although not quite as much, Shield looked okay. You again commented during the game that it's a massive issue that he doesn't have a right foot.
Well, there was one time when he got the clearance out and he was running along and he had to do a big U-turn to come back around because he was running on his right side. And I was like, just put it on the boot, man. Because we saw Treloar, who's, I think he's a right footer, kicking on his left a few times. And he butchered it, but he was just doing it. Like, he's like, I don't care. Like, I'm putting it down there.
Again, quoting you, if you're getting paid $800,000, a year, you've really got to be able to kick on both feet. But I don't want to. This is a positive here. When he had the ball and he was on his left foot, he hit targets. There was one moment late on when he had about 14 options and I think just totally broke down because he couldn't pick which one he wanted and then got tackled. But other than that, he looked okay, he
looked good.
Great.
And it's really important that he does look good and plays well for our club, because if he becomes the guy we got that first year back, or even the year before at GWS, he becomes a massive asset to our midfield.
He was a very good player at GWS.
Yeah.
And I forget that sometimes.
Probably one of the best 5.
Oh, they've had some bloody good players. But I remember the prelim they played against Richmond 2017, it must have been. He was unreal. Tough, hard at the ball. And
would you put him in the top 5 for GWS?
No, I wouldn't have him in the top 5, but that's only because they've churned out some bloody good footballers.
Parish?
She looked okay. Parish looked okay.
Parish looked unreal.
I have a lot to say about Parish.
I'd just like to give people a heads up on that if they're in fantasy. Parish, great pick.
Parish, yes, Nathan's quite heavy on the fantasy, so take his word if you dare. I wanted to mention James Stewart because I was negative about him last week. He actually looked really good. I don't know. It wasn't an overly tall or strong Dogs forward line.
No, that's not true. They had they got Norton and they had English down there, and Martin was down there rotating with English, so they were sort of swapping between those
quite
two.
Tall. Not overly strong, I think maybe is what I'm.
Oh, well, it depends. Ruckman
Norton is, but English you could blow over. Martin's
Martin.
Yeah, okay. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, Stewart took some good marks. Butchered one kick, I seem to recall, but other than that, used the ball pretty well. But looked much more an AFL footballer and an AFL fullback, which is encouraging because that's one area we really need to improve.
And to flow on for that, can I mention Callie in his first game for us? I thought was excellent. I can see why we brought him in.
Yep.
His one-on-one is phenomenal. There was a couple of times where we were a bit happy when he stopped Wakeman.
Yes.
Wakeman, I think, went to handball between his legs, and Kelly was aware to it and went, no, you're not going to make me look silly.
There's a few times I wanted one of our guys just to run through Wakeman, but
that's right.
Beside the point. It was interesting at different times. Kelly played on Ugle-Hagan, who's quite tall, Norton, who's quite tall, obviously.
Yep.
I'm not sure if the Norton one was actually by design or if that's just how it ended up, but playing on talls, which is interesting given why we were kind of leaning towards him.
But that's what he does. Like, he can play on taller and smaller players. Like, that's his strength. Like, he's a really good lockdown defender. Can I just throw in Ridley there as well, and how great he was. Probably his start, he looked really scratchy.
Yes, he got very critical.
Yeah, but he's probably from halfway through that second quarter on, he dominated. Like a lot of
Took a lovely
defensive
little
marks.
hanger on half
Yeah,
back.
took a lot of marks. Did a little bit of the kicking out. So no, I can see like his role. If you think of someone like Stewart at Geelong, to be that guy, that the tall defender that gets across and takes the marks and disperses the ball. I can see what they want to get from him because he's a good decision maker. Doesn't look flustered.
Yeah, and I've mentioned it a lot in the last week. Even composure. We don't seem to have a lot of guys who are overly composed. Ridley's one of them. Kelly was another one yesterday as well, who looked really nice. So, great pickup, and I think we're probably justified a little bit there in having him in our best 22 a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
Do you think he'd start? Lastly, on the individual kind of things, Martin and Wanganeen are on the list. It's official. Not sure if that's coming across overly well on the recording there, Nathan.
Sorry, but that's just exciting, so I was clapping. I don't know how to...
It came across a bit weird, but anyway, that's fine.
Sorry.
I actually watched the last quarter this morning, so it's a bit fresher in my mind, which is convenient because that was about the only quarter Martin and Wanganeen played. Martin looked every bit an AFL footballer. Composed, used the ball well, was able to move in traffic reasonably well, and hit the target. Every time he had that kick, he was under the pump, he hit the bloody target, which is...
There's a lot to like about him.
He's
a good size, good speed, good, like he look, as you're saying, he's calm, he's relaxed.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can teach in footy, but having some awareness in traffic isn't probably something you can really teach.
Yep. And he reminds me a bit of like a Blake Caracella that just looked like he had space and, looked like he just sort of just drifted along and went, oh, look, I'll kick the ball perfectly now to this guy. Yep. Just made it look a bit easy.
Great for him. After coming off 4 goals in the intra-club, he was able to play sort of wing half forward this time and not impact the scoreboard, but still look really good. And the other one there as well, Wanganeen, who kicked 2 lovely goals.
Yep.
The first one just rove the pack and brushed a tackle and kicked it from about 45. No dramas. And then a second one, probably the sealer, really. Again, rove the pack, ran in, good acceleration, good pace, and crucially, kicked the bloody goal.
Well, it was great to see a crumbing forward. Like, I think we saw Snelling do one that was really nice bit of crumbing forward work. But it was great to see Wanganeen, at the base of a pack, come in and pick up a ball. And, there was one where he scooped up the ball right in the goal square, but he handballed it off to...
this Wanganeen?
Yeah.
Yeah, scooped it up on the boundary, clean as a whistle, handballed it to Baldwin, who had the shot.
Baldwin, that's right, yep. But that was just the quality of the pickup. I was just, nice to watch.
And obviously with Wanganeen, it's filling a much, much more desperate need. And he can play a role where there is pressure on a small forward to kick goals, obviously. But if he's just doing the right things, if he's clean, if he's tackling, if he's harassing and being a pest, really, that's a win for us. And, not only that, we get a Wanganeen back in the club, which is
great. Well, we know if Tip and Woody doesn't play, we don't know where Tip and Woody's at, and we don't know that he kicked 30-odd goals last year.
And most of them in the first half of the season.
Yeah, that's right. So we need to find someone who's going to pop up and try and replace that, 1.5, sort of 2 goals a game, sort of that he would have kicked.
Yep.
So. Yeah.
So we'll see. Of course, unknown whether or not either of them will take part in the actual AFL season. I would suggest Wanganeen's more likely. I
think Martin could. I reckon Martin could get.
I think they can both play. Yeah. It's just how they slot in and how they fit.
Yep.
But Wanganeen, because he fills that need so desperately, we need.
Yeah, because there was 26 listed in that team yesterday, wasn't there? So 4 have to go, or 3, I guess, depending on with the sub.
Yep.
So 3 have to come out of that team, and we know if Stringers did, he goes in. So that's 4 that sort of have to come out of the team.
Not too cliche, but it is a good problem to have.
Well,
and you would, again, I would think you'd hope that those 2 are out because that means our good players are performing. But
Yep.
Can't go past the need for a small forward still.
But that's right. I think it'll come down more to that needs of that role that we struggle a little bit. Because if you look at our forwards, I thought that was probably one of our tall forwards were a concern.
Well, yeah, and I wanted to talk about one more thing before we go into the, I don't want to say negatives, but the things.
No, they're not negatives.
The issues that we see.
Flags.
More of a general comment around our stoppages and the dead ball scenarios. That's not really a football term, but you get what I mean. Playing against the Bulldogs, who, again, for all those things I said earlier, they're behind in their preseason because they played in the grand final. But, between them and Melbourne, you've got the two best midfields in the comp.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anyone could argue.
No.
They could, but that'd be wrong. So it was really good, a good matchup for our mids, who me and you at least believe are probably in the next tier of midfields, to come up against that. And first half, they probably had a little bit too much room and a little bit too much freedom to use the ball and use it well, which they are unreal by hand and foot.
Yep.
So if you're not putting pressure on, you'll get found out.
There was a couple of times especially in the centre bounces, where all our mids just went to like the offensive side of the tap, and they didn't get it because the Doggies players are so used to probably sharking the ruck taps because they've had English for so long that he doesn't really tap it to them. So the Doggies got it, and then they came through, and all the Essendon players were not there, and there's this big gap between the centre circle and the goal square, and their forward line, where they could just run in and pick off a player.
When they've got time to kick the ball,
their foot skills
hit the target, and their forwards are smart. They made a grand final, and barring 3 losses at the end of the year, they were top of the ladder last year. So, but to our credit, and there's a few things around it in that I think Bont either went off second half or played forward. He didn't actually feature in any centre bounce attendances in the second half.
Yep.
Trelaw had most of his centre bounce attendances in the first half. I think might have had a couple in the third quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, though, Libba, McRae and Dunkley featured quite heavily. We evened it up quite a bit. And I thought we were okay first half. There were just a couple of lapses where we let them have easy ball use.
Yep.
But second half, we really probably got on top.
Well, I don't mean to jump onto the things that aren't a positive, but one of the big concerns with all that was how they moved the ball from a kick in, and how they how they split us apart. And part of that was their midfield were outrunning our midfield, I think, in that first half. Like, there were a lot of times when our looked like a few of our players, I won't name them, just seemed to be putting along in a jogging motion. And their midfielders were getting space and getting those kicks. And they moved it from a kick in to a set shot without even us looking like touching a ball.
Yeah.
Probably did that 5 times, I reckon.
I've got marked down 5 times at least, and I stopped counting.
Yeah. And I reckon that was just because their midfielders worked harder than ours for a period. And
that probably says a little bit about the structure and maybe something that we're still trying to grasp.
Yep.
Combined with the fact that, again, you're playing a good team that used the ball really, really, really well.
Yeah.
But like I said, to our credit, they had Bont not play the second half or played forward, whatever it was. We didn't have Parrish for the last quarter. Hobbs went into the middle and went to 7 centre bounces just in the last quarter alone. Perkins did a few. But really the heavy ones for us were Draper, obviously, Merritt, Shield. And then similarly for the Dogs, Libba, McRae and Dunkley. So it wasn't exactly a weak midfield for them.
No. Far from
by any stretch. But definitely second half, we locked down a lot more on that transition from them, a lot more pressure on. And when we had the ball, we used it a lot better as well.
Yep. Yeah. In the second half.
In the second half, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that's promising. Again, you're playing the best midfield who may have been a bit scrappy, but you're still playing the best midfield going around just about. So good for us. Good to see. Going on to the other stuff, the not negatives, but the not positives.
The not positives.
I did have that coast to coast movement. So
yeah.
I actually written that down and I've put little X's next to it every time it happened. And it happened at least 5 times where they went from kick in to score, goal or behind, without us touching the ball. And there was one extra occasion where we did touch the ball, wasted it, and then they still got the set shot. And we had like one possession.
Yeah, and I think that the concerning thing about that was that, I mean, for some reason they didn't do it as much in the second half, and I don't know if that was because we became better defensively in that half. But from my understanding, that we've been working on our defensive structures, of trying to defend the ground better. And for that first half, it looked like we had no idea. We were guarding a lot of grass, and that was pointless. Whatever we were trying to do just didn't look to be working. So that was a concern because, good teams are going to really destroy us there.
Yeah, and that's, again, a good time to play the Bulldogs.
Yep.
Because I'm sure Truck was sitting there going, oh, Jesus, we got to fix some of this. I'm sure it's structural. Yep. Goddard commentating did actually say at one point that we looked lazy because guarding grass. There's maybe a little bit of a preseason element to it as well, but yeah, this is the time to be testing out all these structures. So
it was just concerning. That's all. It's just a flag.
Yeah.
It's nothing positive. It's just a flag that I thought
it is you don't want to see from last year too.
Yep, exactly. We saw a lot of it last year where teams would just waltz down the other end and score on us, and we're like, well, Jesus Christ, we've got to get better at that.
Yeah.
And I hope we're not watching a lot of it again this year.
Well, yeah, you'd hope that we play St Kilda next week, or
St Kilda next week, in an
actual legitimate preseason. So
where they might have Foxtel at the
the
camera work.
My God, the KO. It's the position of the cameras at our training stadium.
We thought about KO.
The position of the cameras aren't ideal.
That day too, and he wasn't happy with what he paid for.
And the amount of times the replay screen covered the actual play and drove me insane. We got a free kick at one point. I got no idea what it was for because the replay screen was covering it. And then the freaking cameras didn't. Oh, why'd you get me started?
The broadcast was like it was coming through kilobyte, like 8 kilobytes a second, and not at.
Yeah, it was pretty awful. But. Yeah. We got enough out of it. We could see enough to do a podcast on it. That's all that really matters. Another issue? I don't know what to call it. Let's just call it negatives.
Another flags. We're raising flags.
Oh, we're winning the flag, aren't we? Cool.
No, we're raising flags. So I'm just noticing something.
Damn. Peter Wright again.
Well, no, I don't want to single out Peter Wright. I want to talk about the forwards.
Okay, well, you talk about the forwards, and I'll talk about Peter Wright. Go.
Okay. Well, tall forwards, I thought were pretty ordinary. A lot of the times we saw our players, we in the practice game the week before, we saw those 2 squares in the forward 50. And the assumption was that obviously that's the target where we want to be kicking it to. So
just if you didn't see it, there was effectively two goal squares just a little bit further out than the actual goal square.
In the pockets.
In the pockets, yeah.
And you think that's where they're obviously wanting, that's the point to kick it to when you're about 60 outs, then you come over, put it there. And the number of times we looked to be we put it there, but every time there were doggy players there and there were no talls contesting the mark. Like
at one point,
Peter Wright wasn't even there some of the times.
Those squares were proper painted last week for the intra-club. They were washed off for this, but they were still visible. So at one point we kicked it to there and Tim English took an uncontested mark.
Yeah, and
there's no one there. Hang on, what are we trying to actually do here? And you're right, the talls collectively.
Jones didn't take many of those. Like he played. I would assume he took a few like up the ground marks, but nothing in that. He wasn't in those contests.
May have actually not played second half. I don't remember seeing him at all.
I would say he didn't. I didn't see him at all. So hard to know. But Peter Wright wasn't there, or I guess the other one, Baldwin came on, looked like he sort of played more second half. Franger wasn't around those contests.
Francis was a lot higher up the ground, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not expecting that to be his job. Anyway, it was just...
I actually really liked your
my issue.
Comment on Baldwin earlier that he just looks like a guy that hasn't played a lot of football. He was sort of in the right positions, but then would find himself running under the ball, dropping marks or fumbling a bit. And you cop that. You cop that with a guy has talent, but just needs to get some footy.
I like his size. He's a good size. He seems to be very athletic.
He looks like he's straight out of the 90s. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, true. But he looked like he moved well. Like he got around the ground. He found space a lot of times. But yeah, he just looked a bit rusty. And I'm okay with that. I'm happy to wear it and see where he goes.
I think my issue here, which is what I said earlier, is Peter Wright. He has the capability to be so clean with his hands, to ruck, to kick goals, which every team obviously needs that kind of player. But he's just sloppy.
Mm.
He gets his hands to the ball clean, but then can't take the mark. And that's something that kills you.
He's been ineffective in the last 2, now just practice games, obviously. But I would like to see an improvement in the St Kilda game. I don't think he's kicked a goal in either of them, has he? Would I be?
Don't remember last week. I don't think he did yesterday.
So I'd like to see 2 goals against St Kilda or something. I'd like to see some, improvement coming into the season, because he's going to come up against Geelong in the first week, and then a noted good defensive side. So he's going to want to pull the finger out.
Come out and kick 7. We want him playing well because he does so much for us in terms of being the forward, being the ruckman. He's not really someone we've got someone sitting there waiting to come in and fill his spot.
No, it's very important structurally for him to play well, because we need a backup ruckman, and that's his job, to be the backup ruckman and kick 35 goals a year. Unless
we can get your boy,
my boy,
whose name eludes me, Brian, thank you, into the side as well. That's the only real option there to have Wright.
But I don't think Brian's,
quote unquote, on form.
From what I've seen, I don't know if Brian's can play that.
Well, the fact Brian didn't play yesterday shows it's probably not on our radar.
That's not what they're doing. Yeah. So it's Orville or no one.
Orville being Wright, because he was one of the Wright brothers. That had to be explained.
I don't like that. They had to come up with a new nickname. Apparently, I don't like 2 meter.
That's why he's like 7 litre. Or 7 seater. He's a bus.
7.
Okay, whatever. Hey, well, there you go. Comment in the comments. Chuck it in the comments. New nickname for Pete that has nothing to do with his height.
I'm going with Orville.
I'll go Wilbur.
Oh yeah, Wilbur's true. What about Wilbur? That's actually, I like Wilbur better.
Righto. Never mind. Don't comment it. We got it sorted.
Yep.
One last little thing I want to mention, just we're closing in on time here. Jason Johannesson kicked 3, I think, which is a little bit alarming about that whole small forward thing. Again, we
but Wakeman didn't kick any.
Actually, no, forget it. That's massive dub. I don't know how he looks like more of a flog now than what he did last year.
Yeah, I particularly hate him more now than last year.
I don't think I can say what I was about to say, so never mind. Move on.
Good on you. Be the big man, Sam.
Frustrating individual with a questionable haircut.
All in all, though, look, we were really happy with the game. Well,
look, we've beaten the Dogs, and
but
for all the little asterisks, it's good to get the win.
We played good enough. We played some good patches of footy.
Because, actually, on that, so often, and this just comes from running the Facebook page, Glory and Fame on Facebook. I'm sure you probably are listening to this because of that.
Yep.
Where we get belted in previous years, we got belted in pre-season, and people sit thinking, it's just pre-season, and then it transfers into the season, and we start the season poorly.
That's a good point. Good point.
So you say win or loss, no, it doesn't really matter, but the confidence in the guys that, hey, whatever truck's pushing, whatever all these coaches are pushing, is actually working.
Yep.
And, Dogs off a shorter pre-season is still probably a much better test than any other team on a full pre-season. Apart from Melbourne. So I think, it's a massive positive that we did get the win. Both teams were scrappy, but we were able to win.
And we get to have a shot at St Kilda next week, who I think are a team, I think they're kind of around our mark. Like they were 6th, were they? Not last year, the year before?
They were 6th in 2020, yeah.
Yeah, and should have been better last year, but probably had injuries and other issues that, for good players. So you would expect that St Kilda are expecting to be a team in the 8 this year. That would be a fair statement.
Well, absolutely they are. They'd be expecting.
So they're going to be, the game before the first round, they're going to be giving it a pretty hard crack in that practice match. So that'll be another great test for us.
They were 1 win behind us last year. So, I think it's fair to say that they're around our mark.
Yep, very fair to say. They
maybe different expectations. I actually think they've got higher expectations.
I would agree.
Than us.
They've recruited some, pretty good players.
I think they're average, but their expectations are certainly up there. All right. that's about it. Try not to get too carried away, but very, very happy to get a win against such a good side who actually played a strong side. I like this change that we play less preseason games now because you actually see better sides play the games.
That's right. That's true.
Hopefully next week we might see Stringer. Doubtful, but it'd be nice to get him in. Not worried.
If he's training, if he gets back into full training, I'd rather have him fit and rare in around one than rip Geelong apart.
That'd be nice. All right, well, we will be back next week to review the St Kilda game. In the meantime, thank you for tuning in. If you're still here, you're the best. Thank you, and we'll chat to you next week. Go Dons.
Go the Bombers.